Coming up this week on Breaking Badness. Today, we're counting down the top episodes from 2024. Which did you like most? What topics resonated with you? And what puns were the most clever? To find out, keep listening. Breaking Badness is next. Welcome to Breaking Badness. This is the best of 2024 episode recorded on December 9th, 2024. I am your co-host, Callie. 2024, and there's so much more, Fensel. With me is Taylor, Keep Your Exploits, I Want 0 Days Till Christmas, Wilkes Pierce, and of course, last but not least, Tim Secret Scada Helming. Did I pronounce that, Tim?
You say Scada, I say Scada. I don't have the next rhyming line for that off the top of my head. I think in most jurisdictions, it's considered to be Scada.
Okay, cool.
But it's an archaic term, really. I mean,
yeah?
Everybody calls it ICS and OT these days. They don't really say SCADA that much. It's just for you fans of vintage terminology.
Ooh, that's a very nice way to phrase it. Vintage terminology.
I was inspired thinking about some of the things we've talked about earlier this year.
Yeah, for sure. I can't believe we're at the end of the year already. We're at the point where we're sharing the best of the year. It feels like typically I do this myself, but I thought it would be fun to have you two here. I feel like I just did this not that long ago, which is really fun.
Funny how that happens.
I know. Yeah, I feel like we blinked and now we're already doing a wrap up of what happened in 2024. I guess before we do that, I do want to talk about what's coming in 2025 really quick. We're going to absolutely have more guests on the show. We've been really ramping that up in 2024, which has been great. We went to Black Hat and RSA, and we've had so many people, so many experts in their fields come on the podcast, which has been great to have. So we're going to definitely do more of that. You're going to see more of the book club coming in 2024, or not 2020. See? I'm already doing it. Like
I know. In the old days, we used to write the old year on our checks.
Already doing it. So in 2025, yeah, more book club for sure. We had 4 episodes of the book club this year. We're going to do more next year. And like I mentioned, we were at RSA and Black Hat this year. We're going back again in 2025. So hopefully I can meet up with some people who will also be on the podcast. We'll have even more listeners. So yeah.
So now for all of you that are going to be asked in the world for your 2025 cybersecurity predictions, Callie just gave you a bunch of predictions you can take to the bank about Breaking Badness.
Yes. And at the end of 2025, we'll see how correct I was. We have more guests. Before we get into everything, first and foremost, we want to thank you, our listeners. We know you have a lot of options when it comes to podcasts, and we appreciate that you've chosen to listen to ours, our award-winning podcast, as Taylor would put it. We have won awards on the podcast before, so that's really cool. Maybe we'll win another one in 2025. It's also super fun to see we have listeners around the world, not just the United States. Like I can see we have listeners in Germany. There's been a big uptick actually of listeners in Germany. So if you are in Germany, thank you so much for supporting us. I don't know if that's a Daniel doing, Daniel Arciso, who is of German descent.
We are the number one source of Ohio news for Germany, I think, because of the podcast, Callie, because of you.
Yeah. We're just like, you know what?
That's safe to say.
Yeah.
We can lean back against our Trans Am and say we are huge in Germany.
Mm-hmm. But we've also got fans in Brazil, the UK, Australia, France, and that's just naming a few. We've seen listeners completely run the gamut across the globe, which is very cool to see. So we're so thankful that you feel the discussions we're having are meaningful to wherever you are in the world.
How are we doing in Liechtenstein?
I could break it down by city. I did not break it down by city, but I could.
Oh no, the Principality. We'll have to look that up.
Oh, okay. Am I ignorant here where it's
How about the South Pole? We got any downloads at the research station?
There we go. Yeah.
You know, I don't know what they're doing in the South Pole, but it's
it's summer down there now, so they're partying.
Not listening to this podcast though, and they absolutely should.
Too busy enjoying the beach.
That's right. Water skiing, high-fiving the penguins.
Yeah. I don't want to brag about our analytics, but we did notice we had an abundance of listens in October, May, and March of this year. So of course, if there's anything that you liked in those months better than others, please don't hesitate to tell us and let us know. We'd love to do more of that. I think October, we were seeing still a lot of our Black Hat recordings. So if you're a fan of those episodes and hearing from folks at those shows, please let us know. We want to do more of that so you keep coming back. But yeah, that's great. Anything that Tay and Tim you want to say before we get into the meat of the matter?
Just it's been a really fun year. Yeah, I have enjoyed so much listening to the interviews with luminaries in this field. There are so many great folks doing such great work. And so it's been a joy to listen to them.
Absolutely. So again, if you are a newer listener, we do like to give articles that we talk about like a hoodie rating after we talk about them. So we are essentially ranking from 1 to 10 hoodies, 10 being the worst and 1 being not so bad, how we felt about the news that we were sharing. So we thought it would be fun on this wrap up episode or this look back to talk about the hoodiest versus the goodiest of 2024. And what we mean by that is what great things happened to help move the industry forward and help give bad guys more bad days. And what was the scariest coming out of 2024? Like what had us shaken a little bit nervous there, or just something that it's not helping us move forward as a community. I'm going to kick it over to Taylor and Tim to talk about their hoodiest versus goodiest of 2024.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll start with the hoodiest first. There's a lot to choose from, like most years, I think. Another banner year for bad cybersecurity news, but a few things stood out. Some of these things may have been self-inflicted this year, but I think some of the early stuff from the year where we saw Midnight Blizzard / Nobelium hanging out inside the Microsoft email servers internally for extended periods of time, that obviously we got onto the world shutting down because of other vendors, but like that was fairly big news. I think the extended campaigns targeting the telco providers from
That's
Chinese.
on my list for sure.
Yeah, that's got to be up there. And then my final for hoodiest is our self-inflicted wound, the CrowdStrike outage. Just the CrowdStrike update, that hitting when it did on a Friday and catching the impact that it had, I will put up there with my hoodiest.
That one, interestingly for me, I put both lists because I think their response to it was really good. I think if you're going to have something as catastrophic as that, which you of course hope never will happen, and it was a terrible time for inside and outside of CrowdStrike, but I think they did a really good job of getting things resolved as quickly as they could, being pretty transparent about communication, and you have to do that. It's like how you can think about breaches in your own environment. You hope that nothing's going to happen. You do everything you know how to do to prevent something from happening, but you assume that something will happen and you have plans in place for when you discover that. And I don't think CrowdStrike was making up their sort of crisis response playbook when this happened. I think they already had that playbook, as any really big responsible vendor should, and they put it into action. Certainly a shout out to all the folks from CrowdStrike that really put in amazing work after that to help everybody get back on their feet relatively fast when you consider how huge that outage was.
We went full Chumbawamba. We got knocked down. We got back up again.
That's right.
Did it drink all the drinks?
We're never going to keep them down. No, that's a good list. I have the telecom infiltrations absolutely at the top for me. I have one that is not an isolated event, but a cluster in a sense, which is, it seemed like on this show, we talked a lot this year about vulnerabilities in security products, like security appliances, perimeter security products, and so forth. And that's tough when there's an awful lot riding on those devices not being compromised and not allowing the wrong kinds of things through them. And so it's been a bit of a tough year for that. And again, I think vendors did a really good job of being fairly prompt and responsive to those issues. There's only one name that I'm going to name, and it's because this is another one where I've got a flip side of hoodies / goodie. And that one is one that we actually talked about pretty recently, which was Sophos. And some of their earlier devices got compromised a long time ago, but they caught wind of that and they actually were able to get a lot of insight into the actor, which they traced down to a specific Chinese operation. And they were able to not only secure their devices, but also get a lot of valuable telemetry on what that adversary was actually doing. So both hoodies and goodies for that one also. And the reporting, if you didn't hear that episode, check it out, or at least do yourself a favor and go read Sophos's extensive blog and documentation of this campaign, how they discovered it and what they did about it. It was fairly masterful.
And that's all the hoodies and goodies.
Is this cheating? Maybe not, because I didn't really use this in my preparation, but I was just curious. I asked an AI co-pilot what it thought the biggest cybersecurity stories of 2024 were, and it led off with ransomware. The Loan
I was going to
Depot
joke. It was
and
only
the
trained up to 2023.
and the Change Healthcare. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And it just goes to show, I continue to think ransomware makes headlines. It just does. And these are not necessarily, they're obviously not what Taylor or I put as one or two for the year, but they did have Volt Typhoon in there. So to their credit, that is a pretty huge story from 2024 as well. But anywho, yeah, I thought that was interesting, the different perspectives. Trust the humans, not the AIs yet.
Yeah, but it's still interesting to ask the AIs. I know, like I feel like that's borrowing from our predictions podcasts, which
I'd say from the goodies point of view, I think we saw a number of notable arrests this year. Our friends in law enforcement were very active and reaching out and touching some of the folks who need to be apprehended. Scattered Spider took down some members from there. We've seen even the Russian government actually got in on it and arrested the person behind Hive and Lockbit,
which is a little surprising.
Yeah.
Surprising. I think
it sounds too good. It must be a trap.
Yeah, maybe it's like a talent acquisition. And that has been heartening to see throughout the year as the DOJ has put out there all of their wonderful information on these folks. Then we get to go and dig into our data set and say, hey, they were doing this in 2012 or last week.
And they were using a lot of stuff that you didn't necessarily see in the published IOC lists.
Do we want to, before we get into the top episodes, do we want to take a trip down memory lane for the top punny names of 2024?
Got to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And if you two feel differently, like this list is what I feel are the top funny names because I wrote them. But
to be fair, I think you wrote all of them, right?
Yeah, I did. But of the list,
yes.
These are the ones where I'm like, I like these. But again, and of course, listeners, if you have a preference, let us know on social media. We're very findable. We're on everything. If you're on Mastodon, X, LinkedIn, tell us what you like. Coming in at number 5, Scamily Matters. Number 2, Volt Typhoon Lagoon. Gotta have
that one, yeah.
Could also be Salt Typhoon Lagoon. I'm not that picky. Say my C name in honor of Destiny's Child. Harriet the Spyware is number 2. And then Just Around the Cold River Bend. Disney's Pocahontas tribute. Those are my 5. But what about you two? What are your favorite puns?
I think Volt Typhoon Lagoon is the top one for me.
That's fair. I like that.
Partial to RDP Freely, but I think Say My C Name is fantastic.
RDP Freely was your fun name on an episode.
That wasn't an episode name, but it was, yes, that was well done. It was a year of Taylor's name for himself, his nicknames at the top of the episode, cracking Callie up to the point where sometimes she couldn't get through them entirely, which that was the best.
I don't read them beforehand, so I can be surprised.
I'm aware of that. I also wait until the last moment to put them in there, so you can't.
That's why you wait until the last minute.
That's the only reason. That's the only reason. What else? Is there another reason?
It's definitely not because you forgot, right?
To put it in there. No.
Yeah, I'm looking at the very last minute, so I don't be disappointed that you didn't already do it.
Everyone likes to see it populate.
Sometimes like I'm reading it as you're typing it into the doc and I'm like following the cursor. I'm like, where's he going with this?
Shared collaborative documents are just such a weird new part of human interaction now.
I know. This is actually, I've never really done shared documents before coming here, which is interesting. Like it's really picked up. And at first I was like, I don't know about this. And now I can't imagine doing it another way of not having that shared feature.
Weirdly, there are times, and this doesn't necessarily make any sense. In fact, I'm pretty sure it makes no sense at all, where it's a collaborative work document, but I feel like I'm a voyeur and I shouldn't be watching the person type as they're typing unless we're very specifically, hey, let's hammer out these bullet points or whatever it is. And it's not rational, but it's a response that I have sometimes when I'm looking at these documents.
Oh yeah, like out of politeness, because I don't want people
exactly.
Yeah, like I'm gonna exit out of this document.
If I see you typing, I just do this. Right?
It's a good thing the document has a way of saying that. Taylor Wilkes-Pierce has
It was
averted
looking
his gaze.
I wish like you could see that little, when you see your little picture in the corner, like it'll do that. Like I'm here, but I'm not.
I don't want the observer effect to impact what you're writing, right?
Yeah, because if someone's watching you type, then you can't type very well.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes,
Tell
all
me
of a
about
sudden,
it.
you do forget how to type. That is true.
I think we've come to the main event of what were the top episodes of 2024, which is this is pretty big. I can't believe we're here.
And tell the people, I forget if you told the people up at the top, but tell the people how these were considered top. By what criteria did they make the list?
The criteria is based on number of listens from the platform that we use to publish our podcasts, and that platform sends it out as an RSS feed to Apple, Spotify, wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And what's interesting is, so I use that platform. Not really sure if I should name it. Should I name it?
I don't know. I don't know whether that's a platform that's a good idea to name or not.
Keep the mystery.
OPSEC.
OPSEC. Yeah. So maybe I'll keep that a secret. So
it may be laughably easy for somebody to tell anyway. I have no idea.
Yeah,
I don't know how any of this stuff works.
I just do a podcast. I don't know how it works.
I'm just podcasting here.
Yeah, but so I'm taking the metrics from that platform, and that's how I came up with the top episodes. And of course, since we're recording this on December 9th, it goes up until, I believe, December 6th, which was Friday. So January 1st to December 6th. So we are missing a few weeks in December here, but I don't feel like the numbers will be so skewed that we like come back and we're like, hey, this was actually Scamily Matters is actually number one.
Look, our commitment though is if we're wrong, we'll come back and correct.
I would do that. I would do that, but it gets dicey with the holidays coming up. So it's like, I do it. We'll look at it.
So what we're saying is if there's an episode you really like that's not on here, get on there, start streaming it.
Yeah.
Yep. And this methodology does mean that I believe that our year of our predictions podcasts will never be eligible for our top 10 because they come out after, in that blank zone, after you've run the analytics, but before the new year starts for the next year's analytics. We could do it like a rolling 12 months and capture last year's prediction in case the predictions one was.
The prediction one, it lives in the void. Nobody saw it coming.
Is it true on Spotify that Spotify doesn't collect metrics for December after it releases Wrapped? Or is that wrong?
I hear everybody talking about Spotify Wrapped, by the way. They did something right in their marketing or way they do the platform to get a lot of people paying attention to that thing. I actually do not use that platform, so I don't have a Wrapped.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they have a dossier on everybody and I do have one, but I just can't see it because I don't subscribe.
Oh, they know you.
Don't listen to Spotify. This is what would be.
We're building rap for everyone who doesn't listen to Spotify too. That's good.
But I've seen like some people say this is the no man's land December for Spotify. It doesn't count toward your Wrapped. I'm wondering if it's the same principle here where our predictions will never have a chance to be on this list because of what we record.
Exactly.
But yeah, you guys ready?
Let's do it.
So coming in at
Let's retrospect.
Let's look back. Let's feel some nostalgic feelings toward these episodes. We'll just overlay, or is it underlay, some Sarah McLachlan under it. So it's like that I will remember you. And
that song is on my Better Half's playlist in the car. So it comes up fairly regularly. I'm quite familiar with that particular tune.
Yeah, it's just, I'm going to treat this like a graduation montage and we'll sign each other's yearbooks at the end. And I hope you guys stay cool over winter break and all that, all that good stuff.
And play that one sad Green Day song for everybody.
Yeah. Time of your life.
Yeah, I hope you have the time of your life, y'all.
It's called something else, but I know it is.
I just noticed that one sad Green Day song.
I think that's how they probably refer to it too. But coming in at number 5, we have the future of endpoint security, AI, EDR, and SOC evolution. And this is a hacker summer camp episode, y'all. So when we see that bump in listens in the October timeframe of when we release these, this kind of makes sense. So yeah, the featured guests on this episode were Carl Froggett, who is the CIO at Deep Instinct, and Melissa Bishoping, the Senior Director of Security at Tanium. And with those two individuals, we discussed the impact of AI on cybersecurity and how SOC teams are evolving to stay ahead of bad actors. So I know Tim and Tay, you weren't on that episode. I think Sean McNee was riding shotgun with me for both of those, actually.
Yeah, Daniel was on that one too.
Oh, yeah.
No, he was on a different one. I think, yeah, he was on a different one that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, thank you to our bench of people at Domain Tools that are willing to be on the podcast when Tay and Tim are unable. So I know, Taylor, it wasn't for one of these, but you ran from the show floor at Hacker Summer Camp to be on one of the episodes of the podcast.
Like, we do what we can.
Yeah, it's just something that you get used to. You got to do it. You got to run through the crowded show floor and then the crowded hotel to get to the room we were in.
Anything for our listeners. Anything.
Which, strangely enough, occurred in slow motion. It was amazing.
They're like, you can go faster. I was like, no, I have to do the whole thing in slow motion.
Especially the leaps over hotel furniture and whatnot.
Oh, yeah. Slow motion to that Chariots of Fire song. Like,
yeah.
I had to fight one of the CrowdStrike threat actor styrofoam.
Yeah, things.
Are those made out of styrofoam?
They have to be. They're
all
like,
threat actors are made of styrofoam. That's the big secret.
Yeah.
Don't know.
That's why they don't go away. They don't decompose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's making sense. Yeah, I don't know if you two had a chance to listen to that episode. Oh, Tim.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Any thoughts on these topics before we move on to our number 4 slot?
I love the guests were so good. And in particular, I think that Melissa, I loved how she talked about the human side of all of this as much as the technology side, because that's always going to be some of the biggest challenges that we have, and communication across teams and so forth. But when I think about some of the problems that these technology, EDR technology, and the people that use it and whatnot are struggling with, I'm reminded of a great analogy that our chief product officer at Domain Tools mentioned to me recently, which is that when some alert fires, he likened it to a movie, and either you're near the end of the movie and you have to rewind and figure out what was going on before that, or you're near the beginning of the movie and now you want to try to fast forward and figure out what's going to happen so you can do something about it. Great analogy. And it's often not very clear at the beginning where you are in the movie when you drop in. And is AI going to help us ultimately with that? I don't think we can really know yet how much it's going to help. I think it does help some. And then when the first speaker Carl was talking about the evolution of EDR, how it went. I was just struck that the way that he described that evolution from originally being signature based and then evolving more, and now using machine learning and AI technologies to do that analysis and give a more nuanced view of what might be going on in the environment is just so much. He was talking about EDR, but that's like how security has gone, like that. So much of what happened on firewalls and IPSs and whatnot and host antivirus, it was the same thing. It was all signature based at the beginning, and it's evolved to these different methods of detection. So we'll see. But it was a fun episode to listen to.
For sure. Yeah. Both Carl and Melissa, very dynamic guests. Loved being able to speak with them. Number 4, as we move along, is TL defense. Clap, clap, defense. Clap, clap. Yeah. So this episode is from August 2024, and it featured a Brian Krebs story. If our listeners are familiar with Krebs on security. So we talked about researchers finding new top-level domains, which opened a can of worms affecting domain names intended exclusively for internal company network use. My favorite part of that episode is Tim's analogy of how he defined the namespace collision with all the Seans in my life. That was my favorite part. That made it come alive for me.
Will your one person hit Broadway show in the future be called Callie and the Seans?
Callie and the Seans.
Okay.
It's coming together.
Yeah.
Good. Glad to hear it. Yeah,
That's
you're
a
shopping,
totally
picking
original
around right
tune.
now.
Yeah,
I've never heard that hook before. That's incredible.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't think I'm going to get
Publish
sued
that
at all.
immediately.
I am not going to see a cease and desist anytime soon.
We just watched you create it. I mean,
Yeah, I think I own that for sure.
Yep, it's yours.
But yeah, this article reiterated the importance for any serious enterprise to really control their own destiny by running their own DNS. Before we talk about the second article from that episode, is there anything either of you want to add as a recap before we talk about the second article as part of TL Defense?
I will just say this was not, it didn't crack the top 5 or 10 InfoSec stories of the year. But if you look at changes that were made that caused the most just irritation among InfoSec pros, I think the releases of these new TLD spaces really maybe made the top list for just annoyance factor.
Just
Mhm.
why? And the thing that bothers me
Exactly.
the most is,
We don't have enough TLDs.
yeah, and they're like, hey, Google's like, we need a .zip, and we're gonna pay ICANN to have a .zip, and then they exited the registrar business immediately. Hey, world, here's .zip. It's not our problem anymore, but
They just Homer Simpson into the bushes after that. Yeah.
But then we had .sh as a TLD space. So there's like use docker.sh is a shell script. It's not a super new thing, but .zip is a little, I just don't know what the purpose of it is.
And in with the older TLDs, the country code ones and the older generic ones, of course, anybody that's developing code either knows or certainly should know what the existing TLD space is so that they can avoid those collisions. But now we're hammering them with the new generic TLDs. And guess what? Now there's a .zip. Have fun.
The second article we discussed in TL Defense was about facial recognition being used in the entertainment arena, like sporting events. And Tim, you had alluded to this earlier that Daniel was on one of these episodes, and this is the one where
he was on another one.
He was on another one?
Yes, which I'll mention later. The one with, I won't give a spoiler, but he was on another one. But carry on.
Yeah.
He wasn't as prominent on that other one, but he was there.
Yeah.
And I'll mention it when we get to it.
I know. Now I know. Now I'm seeing
It's coming back. Yes.
It's all coming back to me. Yeah, but privacy is a topic that's very important to him. So I knew he'd want to definitely talk about that particular story. But the argument was facial recognition being used at sporting events was said to create a more pleasant experience at those events. But the question is, does it really? Does using facial recognition versus a ticket and being stuck in lines, does it make the queues shorter? Or is that kind of like a weak argument? And then the other
And
argument,
even if it does, is the price that we're paying worth it?
yeah,
The societal price that we're paying.
and we also ask questions like, will we do facial recognition already at places like the airport when we go through TSA? So is it really any different? But again, I guess, Tim, to your point, that's another price that we pay for maybe getting through the line at the airport quicker, doing that sort of thing. But yeah, anything from you two before we move on?
I will just mention that those are two examples of where the facial recognition is opt-in, that nobody's forcing you to go to a big sporting event. And
Except my husband.
flying, like a lot of times, a lot of people have to fly for work. And a lot of people, from a practical perspective, if they want to do anything vacation-wise or visit family or whatever, they have to fly. And so that's semi opt-in. But then facial recognition is increasingly deployed all over cities, all over the landscape or whatnot, where it is not opt-in at all. It's just there and feeding into those networks. And it makes a lot of folks understandably pretty uncomfortable.
Tim, you did opt into standing in front of the camera.
Yeah, provided where it is.
Yeah.
Number 3, we're almost halfway through this. Number 3 is the weak security default in our stars. And I love this title. It almost made the funny puns list, but I figured since metrics wise, it was a popular episode, I'd just leave it where it was, so it doesn't dominate every category of the Academy Awards here. But yeah, actually, if you're a Spotify listener, people on Spotify liked this episode. This was number 1 on Spotify because creators on Spotify also get a Wrapped. So it was interesting to see like what the difference between our publishing platform and Spotify is, because it comes in number 3 here, but number 1 over there. Anyway, the article we discussed first in this episode was from crypto.news about how at least 2 DeFi protocols reported compromise domains and apparent hacking campaigns attacking, of course, crypto websites. In that article, we discussed what a DNS attack is, and Brian Krebs had shared findings related to this story, including an attack mechanism, which came after we recorded that episode. But yeah, anything, Tim, Tay, you want to add here on what you thought about this news story or what came out of it?
I still maintain that crypto means cryptography.
I still maintain it means Tales from the Crypt.
I'll die on that hill. Oh, okay. That's good too.
I think there's just so much phishing going on in that segment of the internet. It's really tough to tell anyone apart there.
For sure. The second article in the episode was how the JFrog security research team discovered and reported a leaked access token with administrator access to Python's PyPy and Python Software Foundation's GitHub repositories, which was leaked in a public Docker container hosted by Docker Hub. So I remember that one. That's the story where we decided at the end it was neither net good or net bad. It was ants on a log, right?
Yeah, 7 out of 10 ants on a log for me.
Yeah.
Because our JFrog friends are able to eat those ants off those logs.
Yeah, they had
And
accepted
their eyes
that.
do that funny thing when they do it.
Yeah, on social media, they had accepted that conclusion that we came to.
Yeah.
Very good. Number 2, also a very good pun name, is A Tale of OAuth 2 Cities. And this episode is way back from January. I can't believe this one. This one had legs, making it through the entire year as in the top 10. Like, this is the penultimate episode list. So yeah, that's really cool that something we talked about almost a year ago is still number 1. Or
was this episode kind of cheating a little bit by being out so much longer than the other episodes to get
when you put it like that,
so juicing?
is it amortization of the episodes?
So like, yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah,
like,
but some of the other ones were like from October, right? I'm thinking that's probably not a huge factor.
Yeah.
it's not. Yeah, especially when we talk about number 1 and the timing of number 1 and how it rose to acclaim. That one didn't have a lot of time.
It just had to be really good.
Yeah. But the first episode in A Tale of Two Auth Cities mentioned a new method of hacking, allowing malicious actors to compromise Google accounts. And of course, changing your password wouldn't help, which is not great. And it was done by the threat actor Prisma, which we don't hear. I personally don't hear about Prisma too much when I'm looking at InfoSec news. I don't know if you two see more of it. But yeah, I think that's interesting that I haven't really heard much from that threat group recently.
Yeah, that's one. Again, we didn't see them a ton. This was just a one-off oddity of getting into your Google account.
I agree. They did not make the big stories lists of anybody that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
They probably like it that way.
That's true.
Maybe they'll come back again in January and that episode will end up on the top episodes list for 2025. We don't know.
OPSEC by obscurity.
Yeah. But the second article was, we discussed Operation Triangulation, which was part of a presentation of the same name, Operation Triangulation, what you get when you attack iPhones of researchers. And the research was done by Kaspersky. So that was
Who?
Kaspersky?
That's a subtle reference to recent changes at Kaspersky. Anyway, carry on.
Beetlejuice me.
You say it 3 times and an AV gets installed on your system. And it may have the name Kaspersky and it might not.
That's right.
Did you two have any thoughts on this one?
This one's a really interesting, it's always interesting to see the research, another theater targeting the persistent threat actors that go after them, that we don't necessarily maybe focus on a lot as it pertains to things like ransomware and BEC and access to telcos and that type of thing. There are quieter adversaries that we don't get to see a lot from, and this is one of those rare cases where you do get to see a little bit of that action.
Are we ready for the number 1 episode of 2024?
If I were in my usual place, I could provide an actual drum roll, but I am not at that location currently.
Why don't you travel with them?
Good question. I'll have to think about that.
You should always have your
Other than the fact that they're huge. But
Yeah, but now we're in this situation.
I know. Now this has happened, Tim. Thanks.
Yeah, now we have no drum roll. We can add it in post. But it won't be as good because it won't be you, Tim.
I can send a sample.
Okay. But our number 1 episode of 2024 is our interview with Leslie Carhart at Hacker Summer Camp. That absolutely took the cake this year in terms of episodes on our platform. Again, if you're a Spotify listener, these things are actually flipped. So everybody loved Weak Security Default and our stars on Spotify, but when you take the amalgamation, the Leslie Carhart interview is number one. So what did we talk about? So we talked about Leslie's background in, I hope I pronounced this correctly, avionics.
Yeah.
Yep. Avionics and electronics,
Mhm.
the evolving landscape of OT, operational technology security, the challenges of protecting legacy systems, the critical importance of building strong relationships between cybersecurity teams and operational engineers, the realities of incident response in industrial environments, and of course, like the misconceptions surrounding OT security. So it was a very rich episode, and we're so lucky Leslie gave us so much of their time on this particular episode. We've been able to talk to them before, I think 2 years ago at RSA, if
Mhm.
I'm not mistaken, but it's been a while since we had about 30 minutes of their time. It was pretty great, but
Talk about one of the luminaries in the industry.
Right.
Yeah. They don't get a whole lot more luminary. So that was a great interview. This is the one where Daniel Schwalbe was part of it as well.
Yes.
No, that was a great discussion. I will always find this stuff fascinating. And who better to listen to talking about it than Leslie? So
Yeah.
that was a fun discussion. And it's for people who aren't really familiar with OT security, some of the issues, like the issues that Leslie brought up, like misconceptions surrounding OT security. Wait, aren't those all just air gap networks? And if they're not, shouldn't they be? That's a nice idea. Kind of like what Gandhi said about Western civilization, but it's worth listening to the interview. It's really good.
For sure. Yeah, we're absolutely sharing all of these in podcast show notes. So if something is appealing to you and you want to go back and listen to it, it will all be available for you. And of course, like if you're just listening to Apple Podcasts, you can scroll. Oh,
I have our
Yeah.
number
Oh.
one podcast dog.
For
Yes.
sure.
podcast dog is JoJo. Of course, it was no contest.
By the way, do the show notes from that episode include a pancake recipe?
Hacks for pancakes. That is
We should get in touch with Leslie and get their preferred pancake recipe. Throw that in the show notes.
Do you think they have one? I wonder if
I
they
don't know.
pancakes or if they just have a special spot that they go to.
Yeah, don't know.
Yeah, they're hacking for the pancakes. The pancakes.
That's
are just
true.
coming.
They receive the pancakes, they just come in. Yeah.
Yeah,
If you're hacking for pancakes, you aren't having to make your own. Good point.
for sure. But that was our number one episode. So we've reached the end of the list. 2024 was quite a year for the podcast. Before we exit for today, Tim and Tay, is there anything advice-wise you want to share with people? Anything that you want to just leave the folks with as we say goodbye to 2024 and enter 2025?
There was that weird period of time when Dan Rather ended the CBS News show by just saying courage. And it was strange, but you could do worse than keep that word in front of you as you go into 2025 as an InfoSec person.
I love it.
Love it. I'm ditto. Yeah, courage to all of you.
Yeah. So again, we've had a fantastic year on the podcast, and we wanted to thank our listeners. It's our goal to keep defenders apprised of pertinent news and trends. So we hope that you find Breaking Badness both informative and enjoyable. And I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about in 2025 all over again. I don't think the bad guys out there are going to take the year off.
Doesn't seem likely.
They
Yeah.
could though. Hey, some
Outlook,
resolution ideas for them maybe.
yeah, Outlook not so good though on them taking a break. But thank you to our listeners for listening all year long and listening to this wrap-up show. We will be back with our regular programming next week. So thank you and have a great 2025. Stay frosty, everyone.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye now.
That's about all we have for this week. You can find us on Twitter @DomainTools. All of the articles mentioned today will be included in our blog post, which can be found at blog.domaintools.com. Catch us every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time when we publish our podcast and blog. That's it for this week. We'll see you again next week on another episode of Breaking Badness. Until then, remember, don't drink and click.